Welcome. This is Tigrai Television English Program Service coming to you live from Magala, Tigray. I'm Lalan Tejano with today's news and all the details. Tomorrow marks 24 years since an Eritrean fighter jet bombed Eider Elementary School here in Magala, claiming the lives of 60 innocent civilians, including 14 children. Our reporters visited Eider Elementary School to speak with the loved ones of the victims, who are still hoping to see justice served. For more, Sarah Kallali has the details.
Known to be one of the deadliest wars in recent memory, the Ethio-Eritrean War took place between May 1998 and June 2000. The war would take the lives of more than 100,000 people and devastate both nations. But the Eritrean government's impunity to international laws and norms on the conduct of war would make the consequences for civilians even more horrifying. But one event would be more memorable than others. In June of 1998, an Eritrean fighter jet would drop cluster bombs on an elementary school in Magala, Tigray's capital, taking the lives of 60 innocent civilians, 14 of which were children, and injuring 168. Zafr Hashan worked at Eider Elementary School for 26 years until her retirement in 2018. Even 24 years later, Zafr remembers that day vividly. She had left the school on her way home, but right before she even turned her first corner, a deafening sound would stop her straight. I was a third grade teacher when the Eritrean government bombarded the school. I remember it was a Friday. We were preparing for the 8th grade regional exams. We finished our classes early and stayed behind to help clean the compound along with the students. We finished at around 5. Some went home while others stayed behind to play. I live near the school, so I left the compound and started walking home. When, even before I could turn a corner, I heard a very loud sound. The sky above the school had turned into dust. We all ran back. We found our students' shoes, their clothing, and books covered in blood. But the horror would not end there for Zafo. Minutes after the bombardment, when neighbors and health professionals had gathered to lend a helping hand, the Eritrean fighter jet would strike again, killing scores more. We called an ambulance. They were picking up the children and taking them away. The police kept telling us to clear the area. They told us to leave because the jet may come back again. But people didn't listen. People were looking to see if their family members were alive. The jet had come back to the school and dropped another bomb. There were people who came to help, people who came to look for their family members. The second bomb killed residents and family members of students. Zafu lost 4 students from her 3rd grade class that day. She walked into the classroom at fateful afternoon to find the bodies of her students on the doorsteps of their classroom, the room covered in blood and their bodies torn to pieces. She says what she witnessed on that day still haunts her. Aksumite Gebrselassie, a 3rd grader, Burtukan Alamayo, and Abadit. They were students in my class. We found their bodies in front of the classroom, covered in blood, their bags and their books torn into pieces and burnt. Their bodies too were burnt and torn. It was difficult to identify them. After the incident, I became ill. I spent 3 months in a church near my house. I couldn't forget what I saw. The blood, the children's clothes, their books. Gebrselassie Tafara is the father of one of the victims from Zafu's class, Aksumite Gebrselassie. He says the most difficult part is knowing that justice may never be served for the death of his 9-year-old daughter.
Aksumite was 9 years old. She was in 3rd grade. I didn't only lost my daughter, but so many were mourning and many more injured. My other daughter, Seblo, was in 7th grade. She was 13 at that time. Till this day, justice has not been served. I don't want to be compensated or anything, but perpetrators must be held accountable for their actions.
Political analyst Marasat Sahaye says what unfolded that June afternoon is just one incident of many that demonstrates Isaias's complete disregard for human rights.
Either incident was simply it was a continuation of targeting the non-military establishments there. Even he targeted the Addis Pharmacy, Nadigrat, and other non-military bases. The reason was that I will strike all military and non-military bases. Simply, these are simply the property of my enemy, that is PLF. That's why it was targeting the students in the school, But for Isaias Afwerki, it is not a big deal to deal with international laws on the humanitarian or moral
children, as vital service and aid remains blocked. Dr. Malako Abraha, medical director at the Hamlin Fistula Center in Maqala, in his report on the condition of women and girls in his care, highlighted that patients have not been able to get even 2 meals a day, and says that more than 41% are suffering from some form of mental trauma.
We used to provide 6 meals per day.
Made over the past 16 years, according to Dr. Malaku, was lost in the course of the war. The medical director said that the health facility had started to expand on its services before the start of the war, with fistula patients making up just 50% of patients at the center. But now, all of that has been reversed.
Before 2006, we used to do less than 0.8 prolapses operations. By 2019, we were doing really great. We had raised that number up to 50% set back 16 years.
Dr. Malaku, on his presentation, highlighted that the institution is highly affected by the ongoing siege. Due to lack of medicines and medical equipment, doctors are being forced to use expired medications to treat their patients.
Before the start of the war, expired medication used to be collected and burnt. But now the shelves are empty, so we have to use them. Sometimes you have to choose between two evils.
Before the outbreak of the war, says Dr. Malaku, his facility used to care for patients living outside the state, while it now finds itself almost completely incapacitated.
Following the opening of the border with Eritrea, we treated more than 18 Eritrean patients. We also had patients from the bordering areas of Sudan. We also had patients from the neighboring regions of Afar and Amhara. At the beginning of our work, 97% of our patients were from Tigray, but in 2019, before the start of the war, more than 20% of our patients were from outside Tigray.
In his
supplies, our reporters spoke with IDP sheltered in the town of Adwa, who speak about the horrible conditions of the IDP center. For more, Salome Tigrai has the details.
This IDP camp in Adwa shelters thousands displaced from Western Tigray following the violent ethnic cleansing campaign targeting the majority Tigrayan population living in the area. Many here say they were forced to leave their homes after Ethiopian forces started to attack them and their livelihoods.
The things they did, they're beyond what can be comprehended. I would never think that a human being could be capable of doing such a thing. There were dead bodies over dead bodies. We had our neighbors with us who were attempting to escape, and they would just drag them and put them into Takaza River. They would take innocent people, chop them into pieces, and put them into Takaza River. They would force the mothers to watch as they killed their children and then rape them.
While many of these IDPs have escaped from the grips of an enemy that has destroyed their home and threatened to take their lives, many still find themselves in horrifying circumstances, unable to access food or essential medical supplies.
It's a miracle that we're still alive. All people get here for a meal is water. We boil the water to make sure it's not carrying any infectious diseases. I have breastfed for as long as 4 years with my other child, but there's nothing now. What am I going to feed my child? Mothers are in terrible situation. Many have been forced to stay in bed because they're so hungry. Sometimes we think they're asleep, but later figure out that they're actually dead. Then we go bury them and mourn their deaths. This is all we can do. This is our life.
There is no medication or food. People are suffering from many illnesses and dying. Many are dying of hunger. I counted 7 children here in this camp that have died because they had nothing to eat.
You can see these children here. Look at their head. This is because of the lack of food and sanitation.
Kasawan Gabriel Xavier, mayor of the town of Adwa, on his part, calls on the international community and all concerned bodies to help save the lives of the more than 100
displacement of more than 1 million Tigrayans. We visited Sawakari IDP camp in Mekelle and spoke with IDPs with special needs displaced from Western Tigray who speak about the horrific nature of the atrocities committed in their area.
Many have been killed by the invading forces in daylight. Their brutality has no limit. They knew we were incapacitated, but that didn't stop them from committing atrocities on us. Luckily, have escaped. Many with special needs have been tortured, abducted, and killed. All our belongings have been carried to Asmara and Gondar. It's extremely painful. We left before we could bury the Saling Mrutz, Kahsai Tesfai, and Bayena Braha, all of whom are with special needs.
The Fano came when I and a friend of mine were sitting at home. They told us to get out of the house, and we did. My 14-year-old child was standing carrying a bag, and they started beating him. We told them to leave him alone as he is an innocent child. We then told my son to leave and that we would be following him soon. They then forced me and my friend into the house and beat us up. They even broke my artificial leg, saying that I was a Derg soldier. I told them that I was not, and that it was an injury I sustained as a child, but they wouldn't listen.
Amhara forces and their allies have committed gruesome atrocities in my Kadra since the start of the daily war in Tigray. Women have been gang-raped, and properties have been looted and vandalized. I have been detained for 5 days without food and water due to my ethnicity. They also took all my belongings to Amhara region. Now, I am living with my wife here. My 4 children are living in Tandaba refugee camp in Sudan. Both of us are living in a desperate situation.
The internally displaced persons with special needs also essential needed supplies is pushing many, including themselves, to the brink.
It has been almost 4 months since we arrived in this camp. However, no food aid has reached us. We are starving to death. There are no electricity, banking, and internet services. We are unable to access our savings.
I received 15 kilos of wheat in my 9 months stay here. There is no body or laundry soap. Many have become bedridden due to lack of food and medical supplies.
There is no food aid. Not only people with special needs, many with chronic illnesses are having it hard as they couldn't find medications they need. The only thing doctors do is cry as they cannot help their patients. This is all really heartbreaking.
The IDPs are just some among the more than 2 million internally displaced persons in Tigray desperately seeking shelter and basic necessities as the Ethiopian government maintains the all-encompassing blockade.
In similar news, our reporter Winta Kirana visited an IDP camp in Mekelle. There she met Leta Burhan, a mother of 6 displaced from Western Tigray. Leta Burhan says she left her home to escape indiscriminate shelling and violence from Ethiopian and Eritrean forces. It took Leta Burhan 8 months to reach Mekelle, where she says she's been able to find relative security. But her and her family, like the more than 2 million IDP in Tigray, are not able to access food or medication. For more, Winta Kirana has the details.
Latamkel Haila is from Turkana in the district of Kafta Humora in western Tigray. She is a loving mother of 6 that was separated from 5 of her children during a gruesome journey that started when Eritrean forces started to indiscriminately shell their small village.
At 3 p.m. on that fateful day, they started to shell the city. We were in shock. We were just trying to get away as fast as we could. That's when my family and I separated. Just me and my son reached Ba'akhir.
Latamkel says her and her son could find nowhere that was safe. She says that for 8 months, her and her child ran farther and farther away from home, but were no closer to finding somewhere safer where they could settle.
After we reached Ba'akhir, we had to travel to Shararo. But as soon as we reached the area, Eritrean forces started attacking us and chased us to Shira. Then there were attacks from Adigrat. For 8 months after I left home, I was on the run until we reached Maqala on July 22.
Latamkil fortunately was able to meet her children in Maqala. They had made the long way to Maqala with her neighbors, but even things are extremely difficult. She says her or her children have not received any assistance, but even more difficult has been the lack of medication that is essential for her 2 children that suffer from chronic illness.
One of my daughters has epilepsy, and my son suffers from a mental condition, and I don't know how or where to get them medication. They tell me to buy medication from private pharmacies, but I can't afford it. We don't even have food or clothes.
Latamkil says she feels helpless. She says her neighbors die and her children hunger. She pleads with the world to do what it can to help provide basics like medication and food.
There is no way we can help ourselves here. My neighbors are dying due to lack of food and medication. The world has to help us.
Latamkil's story is just one of more than 1 million people displaced from Western Tigray who have managed to find shelter but have not received humanitarian assistance for months or even a year.
Children with special needs and chronic illness have been one of the most highly affected by the ongoing siege, especially in the light of massive depletion of essential equipment necessary to help them accommodate with their environment. We met a 10-year-old girl here in Maqala. A health complication when she was just a 1-year-old has made it difficult for Aiden to move on her own, but has been equally difficult for her mother, who carries Aiden everywhere she goes. But even more difficult.
My daughter goes everywhere I go. I can't leave her alone. I can't leave her to go to work because there is no one who can look after her. I spend much of my time at home with my daughter.
Awatash, Hewan's neighbor, says she wishes she could help her friend, who is struggling because it's impossible to both provide the care that is needed to her daughter and work to earn a salary.
She always has to carry her daughter with her on her back. This is too much for anyone, and we can't help her because we ourselves are in a difficult situation. No one is helping her.
Local official Ashanavi Gauragzabher says Eden's story is just one of many that sees people with special needs and other vulnerable groups have been the most affected by the ongoing siege.
We are not able to reach all those in need because everyone is in a difficult situation. We are doing our best to help those with the special needs and children though. Eden is not only starving, but also unable to get a wheelchair and other equipment necessary for a person like her that's suffering from a disability. Anyone that can help her, we ask that they please do.
A failing health system, lack